I am Renaldo Mckenzie, the host of the Neoliberal Around podcast, and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Around podcast. And as promised, we have with us none other, Mr. Ken Good himself. Happy to have you, Ken.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
I'm a very animated person. I'm very energetic. That's my vibe. I like having conversations with people, whether irrespective of where you are and who you are,
Sure.
Even if we disagree. That is how we get better. That is how we continue the conversation. That's how we grow and live together. So this is good. And we were just talking about some other criminal or rehabilitation issues or diversionary program. But today we're talking about bail reform, and whether or not bail reform causes violent crimes to go up, or whether it causes violent crimes to go down. I have Elliott, the PR people sent me some data, and I'm a researcher myself. I'm a doctoral student who do various kind of research, and I spent some time just reading the studies about bail reform. And I know, Mr. Ken, you're a practicing attorney in Texas, and I believe you're a bail reform attorney, I believe. So
I'm an attorney that specializes in bail law,
in bail law,
and I've written a lot of articles about bail reform, and specifically the federal cases that have been addressing some of this bad bail reform statutes that have all been overturned.
Okay, so you're going to talk to us about bail reform, and what is happening across the country. What's happening in your state, Texas? I know Drexel University. I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm in Philadelphia. Drexel University did a study looking at zero cash bail reform and they find that in their studies the opposite of what they find in California. So I don't know if the disparity have to do with what persists in terms of the state, the demographics, the criminal justice system, how they operate on a state level as against a federal level. Because one of the questions I would want to ask, maybe it does not work federally, maybe it will work, maybe the states get to decide because of what pertains in each state and the people they have and so on. But you are the expert. I am not that. I'm going to tell you, I'm not an expert on bail reform. The discussion about bail reform is new to me. So I did some reading and I have a position, but I am going to table my position until I do more interviews with you and do more reading and have you present. So you have the floor to talk about. Tell me a little bit about. I don't want to talk a little bit about you too much because there's a lot of stuff about you out there. So if you guys want to know about Ken, just type Ken Good in, okay? Okay. But we want to get into the meat of it. What is going on with bail reform across the country and in the states? In California, bail reform, according to a study, it seems to cause more violent crime. But then in New Jersey, Drexel University finds the opposite. What is going on in bail reform, Mr. Good?
Well, okay. Well, thank you, first of all, for letting me come on and talk to you about these issues. It's my pleasure to do so. I would say, what is the purpose? Let's just kind of start real simple. What's the purpose of bail? People sometimes attack bail, say nobody's been found guilty and there's a presumption of innocence, but that's doesn't even have anything to do with bail. The purpose of bail is what assurance that you're going to give the court that you're going to show up to respond to the charges that have been filed against you. That's all it is. And if you have a substantial criminal history, then you've got a bigger chance that you're not going to show up, and you're a risk to public safety. And so you have a bigger risk. If you're a first-time offender, then you probably are a small risk. And so you probably give less assurance that you won't show up for court. What we're seeing in bail reform across the country is, first, there was a call we need to change the way we do bail because it's going to be held unconstitutional. And so just this assumption that it was going to be held unconstitutional. The problem is the 11th Circuit and the 5th Circuit both held that it was constitutional. So we kind of have a ruling there. And so then we came to this argument, well, the way we do bail right now is not fair. And when we get to a fairness argument, it gets into, I would say, weird zone.
Okay, you know what? I'm happy you talk about that because I saw the interview you did with a Miss Mckenzie. I'm not related to her, but on the show, and she talked about affordability and the fact
Hmm.
that some people argue that it is draconian, pointing to the Renaissance or before the Dark Ages, when the Pope or the Church used to give indulgences to forgive the crimes of wealthy people, the nobles. But the laymen could not afford that. So people think that it speaks
Well,
to
that's
a
not really the
draconian.
history of bail.
Yeah.
The history of bail dates, it goes back 200 years in the United
Yes.
States. And there was a point in time where if I was your bondsman and you didn't show up for court, I took your place. And
Okay.
then at some point in time, we replaced it with a monetary amount. And so you come to me just like an insurance policy. You need insurance that you will show up for court, and you pay me a premium just like you pay for a premium on your car. And then if you don't show up for court, then I will pay the full amount of the bond over and above the premium to the court because you broke your promise, and I promised to pay a sum of the court if you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Now, that's kind of the simple outlay of what bail is like. But the problem is, what's the alternative? When you've got one thing that works really, really well and has a less than 10% failure to appear rate. So on 1,000 cases that are required to show up, you're going to have less than 100 people show up, fail to appear. If all the alternatives have either a 50% failure to appear rate or higher, are they really alternatives? I mean, I did a podcast with a district attorney from Yolo County, and he said they're using these simple release mechanisms in California for all misdemeanors, and that they have a 80% failure to appear rate. And, Harris County, Houston, Texas uses simple release for misdemeanors. And according to HarrisCountyCourtWatch.com, they have an over 80% failure to appear rate over a 2-year period. I mean, in a criminal case, their case has to be put on hold. I mean, you can imagine the damage that's being done to the criminal justice system if we're having to put 80% of the cases every week on hold versus less than 10% of the cases on hold.
There are people
Because
who say that that's an argument from convenience because the judiciary has put cases on hold, and they are slow because the process of because first of all, bail.
that's not an argument of convenience.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
what prevents the criminal justice system from collapse. Like in
yeah.
California, you have to get a case resolved for misdemeanors within so many days or dismiss it. If they fail to show up and you can't make them come back, there's nothing you can do to them. They can just disappear until the court is required to dismiss the criminal case. And in Harris County, that's what they're doing to prevent the system from collapse, is they're just dismissing a large number of cases. So it's not a matter of convenience. It's a matter of getting cases resolved and get them through the system expeditiously.
Right, but I'm saying some of the courts, people argue are they cherry pick some cases that they drag out and put on hold, and then other cases are not. But the courts are saying, or based on the argument you're saying, is that bail reform. Many of the cases have to be dismissed because of the cashless bail. But I wanted to, but I'm trying to understand because I hear the argument. Because I know you are against zero bail reform, or what that is that the terminology?
Well, that's what it's called in California. It's
High
zero
reform.
bail. It would be called in New York, release on no bail. And then in Texas, it would be called release on a personal bond.
So the question is, in terms of the outcome or the consequences, what is the difference between somebody who pays and somebody who does not pay? What's the difference? What does that have to do with the rise or the fall in crime and violence? And then again, we say that people who are on bail, they're not convicts because the law in America says you are guilty until proven innocent. So, so my question is, what is the difference and what is the big deal? And I know, does and why is it that there is a disparity in that some places find that they're saying that bail reform has created more crime and violence, but in other places it does not. So I am still trying to figure out to tie the knots. How does getting rid of bonds for bail or paying into a, how does that affect, what difference does it make in the first place? Because People, if people will still be able to go outside and commit crime, and if they don't pay, they can still go out and commit crime. And then, of course, again, please remember that these people that we're talking about have not been convicted of a crime either. They are on bail, and while they're trying to find discovery. So I don't know if you can respond to that.
Well, first, you made the comment about there's a presumption of innocence. That doesn't have anything
Yeah.
to do with bail. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with bail. But that's
Okay.
what applies at trial. When you go to trial, there's a presumption of innocence. But for
Okay.
release, it's just what assurance are you giving to the court that you'll come back? And
Okay.
you have to come back for us to be able to resolve your case because you have a Fifth Amendment right to confront the witnesses against you. So if we're putting a whole bunch of cases on hold because you refused to come back because all you gave was a personal promise and there's no
Mm.
other, you have no incentive and the
Yes.
courts
Yes.
are not
Yes.
holding you accountable, well, then all these cases are being put on hold and they eventually will have to be dismissed. Because think about it, the court system is a conveyor belt. We're adding every month the same average of cases we added the last year or the last month. And so if we don't resolve the same number of cases every month, that increases our backlog. Backlogs break down the criminal justice system. And so, the private surety bail system does one thing, they do it very well, that's get people to go to court. So if courts don't care whether the defendants show up, they don't care whether their cases get resolved, then I tell them you don't need the private industry. I mean,
Okay.
everywhere where you get rid of the private industry, you create chaos. People quit coming to court. You have a higher failure to appear rate. That's what creates the chaos because you have a larger number of cases being put on hold. Chaos creates de facto decriminalization because to prevent the collapse of the criminal justice system, they're going to dismiss more cases. It's not whether they're innocent or guilty. It's because it's just a fact of life. If you just the type of release that you use could require twice as many courts to be able to resolve the same number of cases. So the type of release will determine whether you will have chaos, whether you'll have de facto decriminalization, which will then require will be seen by criminals as a green light to commit more crime because nobody will do anything to them.
What what persists in the criminal justice system today? Let's say in Texas. In your experience, have you what's going on in Texas, by the way? Are they actively discussing bail reform, or have there been any kind of initiative to or move towards that?
We have two different, so we have Harris County, which is Houston, Texas, which has been going different than the rest of the state. The state legislature has enacted bail reform, but I would consider it good bail reform to strengthen the system, not weaken it. But what Harris County has been doing, they were sued in a federal case for misdemeanor cases, and they were actually winning it, but there was an election, and they replaced all the judges with new judges saying that they would settle and give the plaintiffs everything they wanted. And so they did. And the problem is ultimately that case was overturned on appeal. And the Fifth Circuit said en banc that the case should have never been filed in federal court. But they're still following that. And so Harris County is following a different set of rules for misdemeanor cases in Texas than the rest of the state. And that's what's causing the problem. They're following rules that release pretty much all the misdemeanors on simple release. So on their pinky promise, there's no accountability. And they've also agreed that they have to miss 3 times before they can do anything to them. And we pointed out that their failure to appear rate was growing very high. And so they quit requiring people to come to court. So you can imagine if you're not required to come to court till you go to trial, and then at trial you just don't show up, well, that's your first time to fail to appear. They can't do anything to you because they agreed that they had to wait till the 3rd time, even though that's not what state law says. That's the opposite of what state law says. But they're following this fiction that they have this settlement in this federal case, but the federal case has been overturned, but they're still following the settlement anyway.
And what has been in terms of the outcome in terms of, let's talk about rising crime and violence in that township.
Okay, so let me give you a really good example of
Yeah.
that. So this was from a police officer's Facebook page. So there was a couple of guys that were out stealing Cadillac converters, And, catalytic converter theft is something that they've really stopped prosecuting in Harris County. And so organized crime, career criminals, gangs, they've learned how to make millions of dollars by taking advantage of that. And so two gentlemen were arrested for catalytic converter theft, and they were taking them to the jail. And the two guys were like, wait a minute, this isn't the way to the Houston jail, the Harris County jail. And they're like, no, because you slipped over to Montgomery County and you
Yeah.
didn't realize it. So we're taking you to the Montgomery County jail. And in Montgomery County, we prosecute criminals. So, and then they were very upset. So the criminals know the county, Harris County has stopped prosecuting catalytic converter theft. And so they were upset that they slipped into the neighboring county.
Okay. And okay, in terms of your experience, in your own experiences, have you had cases? And I think you are in two different counties. I know you're in Tyler County.
I'm in
You're
Smith County, which the city is Tyler, and I'm in Harris County, and that's Houston.
is the bail system different in these two counties?
Well, bail is supposed to be set by the state, and so it should not be different, but it is because Harris County is operating for misdemeanors under a settlement, and which even though it's been overturned, so they're still following that. But gradually over time, we have judges that are stepping back from that because it's not working. It's a terrible system, and so you see them starting to step back. But the problem is Harris County's in a really bad position because to be in compliance with the state law, they don't have the resources or they don't have the system in place right now where they could even comply with the state law if they wanted to.
How do you reconcile the issue? Because there are people who are for bail reform. They have legitimate concerns. They talk about fairness, and of course, those who are because they're saying that there's some people who can afford the bail, and some people who can't afford. People can afford still get to go out and get to go on bail, while those people who don't afford are stuck in the system. So how do you then, and that's a legitimate argument, how do you reconcile the issue of fairness? And of course, people can pay. I mean, if you do have a cash-based bail system, the issue you're still left with the issue that people can still go out and not go and resolve their cases. I don't know if you can point, and I'm asking you a lot of questions. I don't know if there are instances that you can point to where there are individuals who have paid and have not returned and they have to dismiss those cases, and instances where people have not paid and are given bail and the cases are dismissed, and vice versa. And then, of course, the issue of fairness, that people that talk about the ability to pay, and as against the chaos that you talk about. How do we reconcile all of this?
Well, we compare on release mechanisms, the systems used, we compare them to the failure to appear rate, because the failure to appear rate is, okay, someone failed to come to court. And when the private industry has less than 10% failure to appear rate, and then personal bonds and misdemeanor court right now in Harris County have an over 80% failure to appear rate. You can see right there, that's a huge difference. Now, on the issue of fairness, I think that's one of the arguments that gets used a lot, and I'm gonna say I don't agree that is a problem. I mean, I don't agree with that argument, because the system that's in place has protections for people who claim that they do not have the ability to post the premium. So if the judge sets your bond at X amount, like for you, if he said, or me, let's just use me, if the judge set my bond at $100,000, I could say, look, I can't afford that. Well, the ability to pay is only one of the factors the court is to take into consideration. If I'm a first-time offender, then that's going to weigh above other factors, because there's not any evidence that I've had another crime. I mean, he's going to review my criminal history and say I've never been accused of a crime before. But if I have a substantial criminal history, so in the first situation, he may say, okay, I'll reduce it. But in the second situation, when I have a substantial criminal history, he could say, no, Mr. Good, you've been into the criminal justice system many times, and so you're a risk to public safety, and also you're a risk on coming back to court, so I'm not going to reduce it. That doesn't change my ability to pay, but it doesn't. the ability to pay doesn't trump all the other factors, is what the law says. And so fairness is, the ability to pay is one factor to consider. It's not the trump card. It doesn't, it's not the one you look to and disregard any others. You consider it along with the other factors as well. And if you have a substantial criminal history, then I disagree that you're in jail because you can't afford a bail. You're in jail because you have a criminal history.
What is the idea of bail? What does bail serve
It,
in
it,
in
it gets
trial?
people to come to court. There's a reason why the private industry's been around for 200 years. It does one thing and it does it very well. It gets people to go to court when they're supposed to go to court.
How
There's
does how
no
does
higher level of supervision on anyone's out of jail than that which is provided by the private industry.
how does paying um how does paying provides that? How does paying facilitates
It's
that?
it's a difficult question to answer very simply. So let me just say it like this. Let's take somebody through the criminal justice system, from first time offender to career criminal. First time you're arrested, you're probably not even going to have a problem getting out. But the second, third time you're arrested, you've got family and friends that are standing up for you to help you get out of jail, to come see the bondsman. And then as you get arrested more times, people start falling away. Your friends are the first ones to leave you. The people that are going to stick with you the longest is your family. And even when you've been arrested multiple times, when your family is still standing up for you and they're saying, um, Ken is a good guy. Ken, you are a good guy. I still think you can change. And I am going to help you. I'm going to do this. And your bond has gotten larger. So I'm going to put up some assets to protect the bondsman because I believe in you. That has the biggest impact on whether people are going to come to court. But then there's a time when you can chase off all of your friends and all of your family because you've been arrested so many times. And at that point, you are a career criminal and you need to stay in jail.
Okay, so the argument sounds like an hypothetical argument from hypothesis. Or it is based on an assumption that something is going to happen.
Well,
So
I think it's based on everybody needs to be bail needs to be set for person individually at where they are. And I just gave you a bunch of examples of where different people fall when they appear before a magistrate.
yeah, but I'm saying, what is the purpose of paying to get bail, to go on having to pay? You said because, and this is my understanding of your argument. And I listened to other of your interviews.
Mhm.
People, many of the people who can't afford to pay bail rely on, so therefore, and I'm saying, and I'm showing you how it is pressuring a particular population. People who can, and the philosophy of it, people who can't afford to pay bail, they will go to their families more often than not, and more than likely, and you have said
Well,
that,
bail is usually posted by families. So it's
by
not, that's
family.
not that. Yeah, it's
Okay.
posted mostly by families.
Right, families. And many of the poor people, the families who post the bail, it doesn't come from the person in court, or the person in jail can't afford to pay them back. So then this is the philosophy, the idea I'm hearing. So the family pressures that person who they post bail for to go show up for their hearing, because because they have to use their hard-earned money to post bail for the
Yeah.
person.
What's
Yes.
is there anything wrong with that? With the family pressuring them to get their criminal case resolved and to straighten up and be law and order citizens? What's
I
wrong with
mean,
that?
no, what I'm saying is a hypothetical. No, that's no. I mean, that's a philosophical argument you're asking me, and I could say no. The family is not responsible for the
They
individual.
have the right to say no at any time. Nobody's pressuring them to come
Right.
in and do it. No one's making them. That's why in my situation, when the family says you are still have value, you can still turn around. That's the best chance the criminal justice system has for getting someone to turn around and be a productive citizen.
Right. You're pulling people into the situation. And now let's just talk, and we talk about the issue. Some of these families, we talk about I mean, I work in the criminal justice system as well. Many of these people, if it's not the mental health issues, socioeconomic issues, some of the very same families can't and we talk about different families and where they're from and what families can afford. So if you if you grow up in the foster care system, and you don't have a solid or structured or a family, and many of these many convicts and many people who are in the criminal system, they don't have their family system is disrupted. There's a disruption in the family unit, and so therefore, but yet still, the fairness comes again. We are asking these same people to post it. But what if you don't have family, then you're stuck in jail.
I disagree, because you're still going to be able to ask somebody for a change in the bond amount if you can't afford it. If your criminal history, if you have a criminal history, or if you don't, then that will weigh more heavily in your favor. If you have a criminal history, then you're not in jail because you can't afford it. You're in jail because the judge didn't lower your bond because of your criminal history. And here's the point I'm having with your fairness argument. I mean, in essence, you're saying that our minority communities cannot have public safety because it's not fair to hold people in jail if they have a criminal history and you set a bond at an amount they can't afford. And I just totally disagree with that. And the courts have rejected that argument.
I mean, some courts have rejected, not all. And
Some courts have addressed the issue, have rejected it. There's not been an appellate court that has upheld it. In fact, there's a plaintiffs group that filed the O'Donnell case that have been filing cases across the nation, and they even said in an article, there has not been a trial court yet that has ruled against us on the merits. The only problem is, and what they keep failing to say, is every court of appeals that has addressed the issues that they've brought have reversed the trial court. So they've never won at the appellate level, but they keep making these same arguments.
But I'll follow up on that particular point. I do some more research on that because I disagree.
Look in the Dallas Morning News, because I did a letter to the editor on it, and they printed it.
Okay, the Dallas.
So you just look for my name, letter to the editor, and you can go to the original article, and it's laid out right there.
But the point I'm making, though, is that there are people who do the opposite of what you're saying and have greater success. In New Jersey, Drexel University find that bail reform that does not include payments are working or is working. How do you speak to that?
Okay, Drexel University falls in the same area as several other studies that talk about recidivism. So, we've got New York, we've got Harris County DA currently is a Democrat DA saying recidivism is a bad problem. The Democratic DA, the previous one in New York, saying recidivism, big problem. And so then you've got Drexel, and you've got politicians that are giving out studies saying, oh, no, recidivism is really not a problem. And then you've got Drexel that, they look at maybe 2 or 3 years only on gun crimes only. And then they're making a broad statement that it has not, and it doesn't say it didn't decrease, it said it didn't change. And so they're not saying that it's helped or hurt. They're just saying it's been no change whatsoever. I mean, their study reeks of cooking the books, just like New York and Houston did, because you go to Yolo County, the district attorney kept all of his statistics and all of his data during COVID, and he just compared people that were released on simple release mechanism and versus someone who was released on a private surety bail, and these are people who were released on because of nonviolent offenses, and he found that a person released simply had a 200% greater chance of committing a violent offense in the next 18 months versus somebody who was released on a private surety bail. What's the difference there? I think it's family involvement and accountability, family accountability, and the system's holding them accountable. If you take away accountability, our criminal element sees that as a green light to commit more crime. I mean, we've got situations in Harris County where people were released on personal bond, simple release. They fail to show up. They get another one. They fail to show up, get another one. And it gets to be 17 or 18 times they fail to show up, and they just keep getting another personal bond. That's taking away accountability. When you do that, creates chaos, de facto decriminalization, commits more crime.
In Philadelphia, over 50% of the people are on social welfare.
Well, Philadelphia also has a substantial crime problem too.
And
Philadelphia had over $1 billion in personal bonds that had not been collected. So, I mean, why are you even putting a monetary amount?
I'm about to say that. I am going to bring the issue up because crime and violence, I can talk about relative deprivation. I don't know if you believe in the theory. And I'm going to ask you the issue. When we look at crime and violence cannot be an isolated issue. Crime and violence is an issue that there are many things. Say, for example,
Is it okay to commit crime in Philadelphia? I mean, do
no,
you think?
no, the point I'm making is this. Relative deprivation theory says that where you have high levels of income inequality and high levels of poverty, you have high levels of crime and violence. Philadelphia is
Okay, but there are poor. Oh,
and
look, I was very
let me
poor
finish.
growing up. I'm very poor, and I didn't commit crime.
They rely on social welfare, so we want the families to post bail for their other families that are caught in the criminal justice system. They're taking the money from the state. They're taking money from where they don't have. So the point is that the issue of fairness and equity is still there. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, asking the family to pressure or to involve them in.
Who's going to pressure them then? Who's going to pressure these people to change? I mean, okay, so you're a young male living in an inner city. You get approached by a gang. How are you going to not go in the gang unless your family pressures you? And then you have problems.
Some of these guys don't even have a positive context. That you talk about family.
So what's the answer? So what's the answer? We just we decriminalize everything. We turn our inner cities into, just complete chaos. Is that the answer?
We can.
Then what's the answer?
We talk about monitoring. Say, for example, I interviewed Judge Stephanie Sawyer, and they launched the Sentencing and Supervision Foundation in Philadelphia. I happened to interview the judge.
Why don't we just pay them not to commit crime? Why don't we give them a place to live and pay them not to commit crime?
Well, I mean, what I said to you, there are mental health issues. There are socioeconomic issues. And the issue about bail reform, what I'm saying is that we cannot have the hypothetical argument is to rely on the family to post bail and pressure them to hold them accountable.
Well, we also can't have a hypothetical argument that everybody in the inner city doesn't have family. And so what is the solution, though? What is the solution that you're proposing then?
Monitored bail. What about monitored bail?
Monitored bail.
Yes. What about monitored bail? What about putting?
And what is monitored bail? We're going to put everybody on a GPS system. We're going to put everybody on a GPS so we know where they are when they committed the crime.
I mean, it works. I mean, what's wrong with that? We have to come up with what is wrong? Okay, there are several mechanisms: monitored bail, treatment.
No, that doesn't work. Treatment,
probation and case management services.
So give repeated probation.
Officer.
So why are they committing crime in the inner city anyway? I mean,
the issue
the mental health. Look, I agree. The mental health is a big problem.
Yeah.
But you have a better chance of having a good resolution on mental health in a family situation than you ever do with the government. I mean, there's a reason why the states, their biggest mental health facilities are in the jail. I mean, is that really what we want our jail to be, the biggest mental health facility? I mean, we have to get more family involvement. I have a sister that had those types of issues. She had a car accident. She had a brain injury. And I'm just telling you, we all were estranged from her for many, many years. But at the end, I was her guardian and she was living in an assisted living facility. And those turned out to be some of her best years. Family involvement in the mental health is your best chance at having a good resolution. Anything else, you're just trying to make chicken salad out of chicken.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the argument is, I ask you, why do we have bail? And of course, the argument
to get people to go to court.
But how do we get people to go to court with bail? Okay, if these people have no money, because their family's posting the bail for it.
Okay, yeah? So, but what do we do if people won't go to court? What do we do? I mean, isn't our only option to hold them in jail until their case gets called? I mean,
well, the courts have to do better at expediting cases. I think.
Well, I agree with that. We need to move cases quicker, but the problem is with the systems they're using and that you're advocating, we're increasing our failure to appear rate, which slows down the ability of the courts to do that. So I don't disagree that we need to speed up, but everything we're talking about doing is doing nothing but slow down. And so if we give somebody, we're just monitoring on their GPS and they decide to cut it off and and we don't have people that notice that on the weekends because we don't have people that work on the weekends, then it's going to be 3 days before you know, and then we've got to issue a warrant. A warrant's been sent down to the warrants department, and now you've got that warrant joining the tens of thousands or 50,000 of warrants in a city like Philadelphia that's waiting to be served, which means you have to commit another crime to come back into the system. I don't agree. Like in the city of Philadelphia, okay, the people arrested are usually a minority, but so is the policeman that arrested them is a minority. The prosecutor is that same minority. The judge is that same minority. So I don't agree that there's a fairness problem because the people that are prosecuted are being prosecuted by the same people of the same race.
No, it's fair. It's fairness because high levels of inequality that allows for some people to post bail and others can't until they're stuck in.
So we can't hold anybody in our inner cities, and if that causes crime to go up crime to go up with our certain minority communities, that's just tough on them. That's what you're saying.
No, the reason why we have welfare is because we recognize that the systems create issues for families, and we have a responsibility to help people. Okay, the reason
helping people, do we have a responsibility to help somebody commit a crime? No,
I'm not talking about committing a crime, but what I'm saying is that there are real issues in the society where we cannot have the same expectations from people who are at different levels of the socioeconomic. We talk about economy.
But that's what bail is based on. If someone is poor, their bond's going to be lower. If your bond is $500, that means you may have to give $50. My bond's not going to be $500 because I can afford more than that. So my bond's going to be higher.
That's not true. Judges don't base their bail, how much they charge on affordability. In many instances, they base it on the crime. And
okay. So wait. Yeah. I mean, that's a charge-based release system. Yeah. And when they do charge-based, it's usually a lower amount than if it's if you do a personal consideration. So I don't agree. I mean, if they're just doing a charge-based release, like in New York, they've set out all these charges that you have to be released on no bond. And in California, it's a list of charges that you're released on zero bail. The problem with that is if you have a substantial criminal history, the courts can't do anything about it. And that's where I have a problem with charge-based release systems. If I've got a substantial criminal history, I've been arrested 10 times for that same charge, then I shouldn't be released on zero bail. I shouldn't be released on no bond. I shouldn't be released on a personal bond. And so I think the difference between the two of us is a first-time offender, second-time offender who is living in the inner cities. But I'm trying to say, look, you're tying the hands of the judges so they can't address career criminals, gangs, or organized crime. That's where I have a problem. When we do these charge-based release mechanisms, then those groups figure out how to take advantage of the system and make millions of dollars.
Okay. Fair point. So therefore, the judges then have to. It's the statute. It's
the legislature can't tie the hands of the judges.
But the judges have to also do their job in terms of.
Well, but if the legislature says they can't ever hold them if that's what or can't set bail if they're charged with X, then that needs to change.
Right. That is true. Well, this was great. This is intense. I am enjoying conversation. Wow. Do you know what time it is?
No.
4. Well, we started at around 3 and we've been talking for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Wow, this is great. I love it. Ken, I didn't realize we were going to have such an amazing time. I am loving every moment of the conversation. This is good. I love it. And just so you know, this is what we do. You're a trial attorney, so we are not upset with each other. We are having conversation and we are still great friends. And that is great. And I'm happy that you came on the show and talk and share your perspective. We're going to wrap up now, and give you the final word. And then we have to exchange information because you got to come back on the show and talk about what's going on.
Well, if people want more information about me or my organization, you can go to pbtx.com, which is the Professional Bondsman of Texas. We have a blog where we highlight important criminal justice stories, but we also have our own podcast. There's a link to it on our menu, but you can also just go to thebellpost.com. All we talk about on the Bell Post is criminal justice issues. If you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, where how they decreased their jail population, and they decreased it by just cite and release, so they quit putting people in jail pre detention. So no matter what their criminal history is, but also, they changed New Jersey's laws because they said that they were not fair and there was a disproportionate number of certain races in the jail. Well, now here, all these years later, that hasn't changed. The numbers may have gone down a little bit, but the percentages are still the same. So that has not proved to be effective, or didn't that reason for the change didn't work out. So we talk about all those. We want to educate lawmakers and also the public so that they better understand these criminal justice issues, because we want to try to take politics out of it and explain what works and what doesn't work. We know how to decrease crime, and if we would get politics out of it, we could decrease crime. But we're having all these decisions influenced by politics right now.
This is powerful. Got to get you back on the show, and you make a very powerful point, which I must hone in on. You talk about, fine. Yes, we talk about fairness, but we can't. And I'm going to make this point: we can't be overreactive. We cannot be so overreactive where we get rid of the stuff. Okay, and it creates more, because in a sense, yes, crime and violence is a problem, and we talk about the issue of poverty and mental health, but we cannot table and get rid of standards that are proven and holding people accountable. So we have to ensure that, the politicians should stick to their guns, do what they're doing in terms of making the society better and work for all Americans, while the justice system continue to do their job. And this is great. Thank you so much, Ken.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it. It's very lively.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. And thank you for joining the Neoliberal Realm podcast and YouTube channel. Please visit us by going to anchor.fm/theneoliberal, or any stream that you'd like. We're available on over 12 stream in over 35 countries. And of course, we are now nearing 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you are a subscriber on YouTube, I want to say thank you. And we are nearing 100,000 views. Thank you so much. Visit us at theneoliberal.com and renaldocmckenzie.com. And we are also going to write an article based on the conversations we have, and it will be available in our blogs at the Neoliberal Journals and the Neoliberal Post at theneoliberal.com and renaldocmckenzie.com. Thank you, Ken. You were amazing. Please visit. Do you have social media?
We do, but you can find them all on pbtx.com.
pbtx.com. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Well, bye-bye. And I'll get you you might have how do I send you a copy of the script?
Send it to Elliott or Kara, whoever contacted you, and they'll get it to you.
I will do that. And
I'm going to
release it on Sunday. All right?
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.